It's Axe Week, baby, and we got to talk about the Wisconsin Badgers. I'm going to give you all you need to know about the players to be on the lookout for, the players Minnesota has to slow down, the strengths, the weaknesses, the make or breaks, and my biggest concerns today.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. We're here to talk about Badgers Week. It's Axe Week, and guess what? The game is coming earlier than you're used to because usually it's on Saturdays. This week it is on Black Friday, 11 a.m. Ready, set, go. We're ready to kick it off with Gophers football. So today we're going to talk about those pesky Badgers. We're going to talk about how their season's been going and what they have going on for them. It's been a tough year for Wisconsin Badgers overall, and I think the Gophers really should win this game, but they're going to have to still play at their best. They can't overlook this team. They can't make silly mistakes. And so overall, we're going to talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of this Wisconsin Badgers team. We're going to talk about the make or breaks for Minnesota, and then we're going to talk about 3 players they have to slow down and the biggest concerns for the game. Be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube. Be sure to follow me over at Gophers Kane Rob on Twitter because, you know, your boy, it has a new project coming out pretty soon here, and I really hope y'all will follow along with me there as well. But let's break it down. Let's talk about the Wisconsin Badgers. So first off, the strengths of this team. Now, heading into this season, I was like, man, they have major pieces on their defense set to improve, especially with Hunter Wohler back, especially with Ricardo Hallman back at the time. But you know what? There have been some injuries. There have been some bang plays. There have been people who have left the program from Wisconsin this year. So it's been up and down for them, and especially in the wins and loss column. Now, overall, when you're looking at them, their defense is still strong, especially in the pass game. The pass defense is top 20 in the country right now, and they had one of the top receivers from the Big Ten returning in Will Pauling. Now, he has had some injuries. He has had some ups and downs this season, but he's still producing over 400 yards, multiple touchdowns. So he's still a strength of the team that you have to at least be aware of where he's at on the field. They also have a speedster who has come alive in Vinny. And so Vinny Anthony is a guy to know. The offensive line has been a strength and a consistent thing for them all season, something to help them get going. And their ground and pound game has been pretty good overall across the landscape of college football, but especially in the Big Ten. So they've got a running back room depth, and that has come into use for them because Ches Malusi, who was the starter, who was coming back from an injury season last year, he had ran with Braylon Allen until he got hurt. He came back this year. Everybody's like, he's a starter. Let's go. Let's see what happens. He ends up stepping away from the program by like game 3 or 4 of the season. But Tawi Walker, the Oklahoma transfer, took over as the lead back, and he has looked really good, especially in a handful of games as well. So overall, they have running back depth. They have an offensive line that can be consistent and doesn't allow too much pressures on the quarterback. They have some receivers that have shown up, and they have some defensive pieces, though the defense has struggled across the board. Then you flip to the weaknesses of this team. Their interior defensive line feels like it could be a weak spot, and is kind of shown as a weak spot this year. They haven't really gotten sacks. They haven't gotten a ton of pressures. And on top of that, the secondary and the pass defense is what has been the strength of this defense. So that has held true. Now, on top of that, I was questioning, does Tawi Walker have the upside to be a top running back in the Big Ten? Now, Tawi Walker has held his own, but I don't know if he has the talent to be that guy, the it factor, the reason you win games. So he has had a couple big games on the season, but overall, I don't see him as like a holy crap, you have to scheme to shut this dude out type of back. Overall, I was worried about Tyler Van Dyke. I thought he was a turnover machine. Would he bounce back? He ends up getting injured. He was having a mediocre season prior to the injury. But then you've got Braden Locke, who is truly a turnover machine. 10 interceptions on the year. Every game he has started this year, he has had at least 1 or 2 interceptions on the season. So overall, those are kind of the weaknesses. They also fired their OC. Their offensive consistency has been very, very weak for this team. So overall, the top 3 make or breaks when it comes to the Gophers and trying to win this game. First off, you have to capitalize on turnover opportunities because there are going to be some. I just told you this quarterback, every game he has started this season, he has had 1 or 2 interceptions. That means you're going to have some turnover worthy plays in this game, and you have to come up with them. You have to catch them. You have to turn them into big plays. You have to try and flip the field. Hopefully, you can turn them into scoring opportunities. But most importantly, you have to cash in on them when they present themselves. So number 1, you have to capitalize on the turnovers. Number 2, on the key make or breaks is pressure, pressure, pressure. Not only do you have to stop the pressure, which Wisconsin doesn't bring a ton of, which should play in Minnesota's favor, but you have to bring the pressure, and that's going to be the difficulty in this game because Wisconsin's offensive line has been legit all season long. It's been one of the strengths of the entire unit. Their tackles and their center are all above average graded on PFF. They've held their own. They haven't allowed too many pressures on the quarterback overall this year, so definitely the offensive line and creating pressure on this offense to put Braden Locke into bad situations to turn the ball over. That's going to be huge. So you'll have to capitalize on the turnovers. You have to create a ton of pressure on this offensive line. And then on top of that, you have to establish the run and let it open up your offense. This Wisconsin defense is not good at stopping the run. They are 91st in the country when it comes to rush defense. Now, Darius Taylor has looked a little off in the last couple games. He looks like he may be fighting through some minor injuries that have piled up over the season, but he is still a difference maker. He still has that game burst. He still has the wiggle to him. So if Darius Taylor can get going in this game, that can be a difference maker. If Marcus Major can get a couple big runs in this game, that can start to open things up for this offense. The running backs are going to be key, both in the ground game and in the passing game. I think if the Wisconsin Badgers slow down the run game, if they shut Darius Taylor out of this game, it could be real tough sledding for Minnesota, and it could be an opportunity where they drop the game. So a lot on the line this weekend, a lot, because the Badgers have had a 22-year bowl streak going on, and that is all on the line against their number 1 rivals in the Minnesota Golden Gophers. So not only is the axe on the line, but you've also got a 22-year bowl streak that could be shattered if Minnesota wins on the road this weekend. Now, when you're looking at this Badger team as a whole, they fired their offensive coordinator. They don't have a lead guy, but more of a by committee approach ever since they have fired Longo to close the year. And it hasn't looked great so far, to be honest. Braden Locke, like I said, he's been on the struggle bus, 12 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Every game he has started, he's had 1 or 2 interceptions, and that should play into Minnesota's strengths. Additionally, he's only had 56% completion percentage on the year, so he's not a great quarterback. He's not a great decision maker, and I'm surprised they haven't given their true freshman, Mabry Metoyer, some more opportunities to see if he could be the guy, but maybe they're just not seeing enough in practice. The dude's got the size, he's got the intangibles, he's got the big arm, he can run, but overall, Coach Fickle's like, nah, he's not ready. So they've got Braden Locke going, and so far, Braden Locke has been helping the opposing teams. But then you go to the run game. Now, the run game is the first and the second option for this offense. Tawee Walker has been the lead back since Malusi stepped away from the program. Overall, Tawee has had 828 rush yards, 10 touchdowns on the ground. The Badgers have had 19 total touchdowns on the ground, so running the ball is a ton for this Badgers offense. They also have a true freshman in Darian Dupree, who is a name to be aware of. 72 carries on the year, 302 yards and a touchdown. He's just getting warmed up throughout this year, but I think he could be a guy who could be a future back in this room. Dylan Jones is another high-rated true freshman that's on the team. So they have a stable of backs in this Wisconsin Badgers backfield. You go to the pass catchers, I told you, they have a number of guys that have the talent. Will Pauling is still a top all-around option for them, and he's having a down year. He's had some injuries, but he's a name you have to keep an eye on with 407 yards and 3 touchdowns. But then you got Vinny Anthony. He is a speedster that Locke has found deep nearly every game, 633 yards, 3 touchdowns on the season. And then I'm going to skip over Bryson Green and CJ Williams because they're not players I truly believe in. They're not players I think are massive difference makers, but Trech Kekahuna. He is a freshman, and he is a playmaker. He is a guy that has had some solid moments so far this year where he has kind of taken over at times. 275 yards, 2 touchdowns, again, a freshman. So he's a guy you need to know where he's at on the field, but you flip it to the defense, pass defense, 13th in the nation. That is good. That is better than the Gophers currently right now, and the Gophers' strength has been their pass defense for most of the year. They were top 10 for a lot of the year. I believe they're sitting at 22 right now, but still a top 25 team in that pass defense area. Wisconsin, though, top 15 at the 13th in the nation. But everything else beyond that, really poor. 91st in rush defense, 52nd in scoring defense, 96th in turnovers, 114th in sacks, and then total defense 39th. And that definitely helps with the pass defense. But overall, this defense hasn't been as much of a stalwart as what you would maybe think the Badgers would be. So the defense has some great safeties. They have some great linebackers. Those are the areas you need to be aware of as a Gophers fan. Hunter Wohler, 63 tackles, 6 pass breakups, leading the team in tackles. Definitely their best player, in my opinion, when it comes to the defense. But Preston Zachman is another safety you have to be aware of. 53 tackles, 4 PBUs, 2 interceptions. And then you've also got another safety in Austin Brown, 49 tackles, 1 sack, 3 PBUs, and a forced fumble. So you've got 3 different guys that can rotate in, 3 different guys that can play more in that nickel role if they have to. But those 3 DBs are holding it down and helping that pass defense be a top 15 unit in the country. Their linebackers also hold their own. Jake Chaney with 55 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble, and then Christian Allegro, 58 tackles, 3 sacks, and a pass breakup. So overall, the Gophers are going to need Darius Taylor to be healthy for this one in order to have this play heavily in their favor. If not, then it could be a really tight contest. But if Darius Taylor is feeling it and he is able to carry the rock, make those difference-making plays, and be Darius Taylor, and you add a little bit of Marcus Major sprinkled in there, I think the Gophers should be able to walk away with the win in Madison this weekend. But I'm going to tell you what my biggest concerns are for this matchup. That is what is coming up next. First, Gopher fans, let's talk about our friends over at FanDuel, because you can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The NFL is in full swing, and we're starting to see that playoff picture start to take shape. The Vikings are in it. The Packers are in it. The Lions are in it. Best division in football, the NFC North. And you know all too well about the NFC North. If you want to take a shot on the Vikings maybe beating the Lions later this season and becoming that NFC North champion, you can take a shot over at FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app, gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So you can check the scores in the middle of the game, you can view the live stats, you can view the play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you can place your bets. So go to FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet over at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL and of Locked On. All right, Gophers fans, we're going to slide through my biggest concerns in this game of the Gophers versus Wisconsin on the road in Madison. So my number one concern in this game is taking care of the football, plain and simple, because that has been what has been the downfall of the Gophers in their last 2 losses, especially, but I would say in 3 of their 5 losses, the Iowa game, the Rutgers game, and the Penn State game. The turnovers were the difference in that one, and don't make it another reason why you lose the game to the Wisconsin Badgers. If you lose to Wisconsin, that means you lost every rivalry game you played in this season, and that is just not okay. The Michigan game, close but no cigar. Penn State game, close but no cigar. The Iowa game, not close after the second half. So overall, Minnesota, your turn to bounce back and make sure you don't get swept in your rivalry trophies is this Axe game, and it all starts with taking care of the football. If you don't do that, you might be in the hurt locker when it comes to this specific game. So overall, Minnesota has to take care of the football, because that one costly fumble in the Rutgers game cost you the game. The interception hurt in the last game, and then the fumble on top of that definitely hurt to the point where it almost was a flipping moment for the Gophers and losing their lead and their upset potential against Penn State. So when you're looking at this Badgers game, you have to take care of the football, plain and simple. If you do not, it could be your downfall. Now, my second concern for the Golden Gophers versus Wisconsin is showing up for 4 quarters. I feel like last week there was so much energy, there was so much pride, there was so much passion in the game to pull off an upset against number 4 Penn State. And I feel like you should have that same type of pride, passion, and energy for a rival Wisconsin game to be able to end their season prematurely and all of that. You should have all of the excitement behind you to go in there and march the field, take the win, take the Axe back, and head on back home. But Minnesota hasn't always showed up for 4 quarters in these games. The Michigan game, if they show up all 4 quarters, they win that game. If you show up all 4 quarters against Iowa, you're at least in the game. They were in the game, leading the game the first half, and then all of a sudden they disappeared in the second half, and it was brutal sledding. Now, the Rutgers game, they showed up for about 3 quarters, and that fourth quarter, they just disappeared. So you have to show up all 4 quarters, playing your best football, playing mistake-free, making the ball the program. And if you can do all of those things, you should be in good shape to beat a Wisconsin team that has been struggling, especially as of late, because Wisconsin has lost their last 4 games. So overall, you want to keep that struggle going. You want to be able to add to that, and they're going to have added motivation knowing their bowl streak is on the line. They already had the motivation with the Axe. They already had the motivation with it being a rivalry game, but you add a 22-year-long bowl streak, and I'm going to tell you, every person in that locker room for Wisconsin is like, I don't want to be that team. We don't want to be that team that ends the streak, the third longest streak in college football. You don't want to look back and be like, we were the team that messed it up. We were the team that dropped the ball. They're going to be playing with their pants on fire, hearts on fire, minds on ice. So overall, Minnesota has to play 4 quarters or they will be beaten. And then finally, my third concern for this game is the lack of the running game or not winning in the trenches. That's going to be pertinent in this game. Like I said, their pass defense is really good, 13th in the nation, but they have opportunities to run all over them, and you have to capitalize on those opportunities. But the Gophers have been one of the worst rushing teams on the season, which is crazy when you're talking about PJ Fleck style of football. That's not what we're used to seeing, but hopefully the Gophers can bounce back in a big way versus Wisconsin, who has struggled against the run in the season. But you could say the same thing against Rutgers. Rutgers had struggled against the run, and they shut down Minnesota when it came to the rush game. So overall, hopefully Minnesota can get it back on track. The offensive line played a lot better against Penn State, who was a top 5 defensive unit across the board. So if you can have that type of offensive line play in your matchup against the Badgers, that should open up opportunities for Marcus Major and Darius Taylor, and that should help you open up the offense as a whole and hopefully win this game. So those are my top 3 concerns heading into this one: taking care of the football, showing up 4 quarters, and a lack of a run game. If any of those things happen, if all of those things happen, the Minnesota Gophers could be in trouble. But if they can capitalize on those and they can make sure to have those areas going in a positive manner, then I think they'll walk away with the dub, the Axe, and hurting their Badgers by ending their winning streak and ending their season early. Now, the final thing I want to talk about in today's show is 3 players that we have to slow down in order to have some success in this Wisconsin matchup. That's what's coming up next. All right, Gophers fans, I want to thank you first and foremost for listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, making us your first listen when it comes to Gophers Daily Sports. Now, like I've told you on the show a few times, this is going to be my last season with the Locked On Podcast Network. I just can't do it with 5 days a week and having a newborn and having a growing family and multiple jobs right now. It's just too much to juggle, but I'm not done with my Gophers coverage. So I hope you'll follow me over on Twitter at Gophers Kane Rob. I'm going to be dropping a new podcast that's only going to happen once a week covering your Gophers. So I hope you will come with me there, along with staying here with Locked On Golden Gophers as they find a new host. But I definitely encourage you to check us out over on Twitter at Gophers Kane Rob, and hopefully stick around for the Gophers coverage. Now let's talk about the 3 players we have to slow down. The first one being Tawi Walker, the running back for Wisconsin. Like I said, their first and second option on offense is running this football. Tawi Walker is the lead back. He has had games of 94 rush yards, 198 rush yards, 126 rush yards, and a 97-yard game just 2 games ago. And he also has multiple 3-score games as well. So Tawi Walker can be a home run hitter, a big playmaker, but overall, it's up and down. It is not consistent across the board of having those massive games. So hopefully the Gophers can slow him down and make sure he isn't the reason that Wisconsin is fighting and in the game. So Tawi Walker is the number 1 player you have to slow down. The number 2, it's a little bit of a cheat, but I'm saying the entire Wisconsin offensive line, because they have actually held their own fairly well on the season. They've only given up 57 pressures on the year. Now, if you compare that to Minnesota, Minnesota has almost doubled them with 95 pressures given up on their quarterback on the year. So 57 is dang good. I believe if you do that across 10 games or so, that's 5 pressures a game, 6 pressures a game. So overall, not bad at all. Actually, pretty dang good. So overall, Minnesota's going to have to make that the anomaly. They're going to have to be the anomaly and hopefully get the pressures on this quarterback. If you can get pressures on a quarterback that's already turning the ball over with an offensive line that is playing that well, that is going to cause chaos, that is going to make waves, and that is going to win you a ball game. So if you can slow down this offensive line, put the pressure on, overall, it's going to be massive. Now, Wisconsin, the line is tied for 11th in the nation in sacks allowed with only 11. They're 2 away from being a top 5 school in sacks allowed. So overall, that just speaks to how well this offensive line has been playing. Now, both the tackles and the center have been playing really well in Nelson, Malman, and Renfro. So those are players that you're going to want to hopefully have them off their game. And then finally, the third player that Minnesota has to slow down in this one is Preston Zachman, in my opinion. He's the second highest graded player on defense, 12 defensive stops. He gets his hands on the ball, 2 interceptions, 4 pass breakups. He's 4th on the team in tackles, and he hasn't given up a touchdown yet this year. That being said, he can be attacked in the air a little bit, 22 receptions given up on 33 targets. So 2/3 reception rate, basically. And he has also given up 227 yards in that. So there are opportunities to get after him, but he's a player that you want to have an off game. If he's having an off game, then hopefully the Gophers are moving the ball on the ground and then catching him in the play action and what have you. But that's going to do it for us on today's show. Tomorrow, Thanksgiving, it's going to be all about the predictions. We're going to have Tristyn Spann-Ford on here, and I can't wait to see you then. Row the boat, Sky Imago Gophers, as always, and please don't forget to hit subscribe.